This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details. And
Mall of America mystery cards are back, and we're bringing them to you all summer long. You can get yours at KFAN events throughout the summer, wherever you see our KFAN street team, including training camp. Then make sure to redeem them at Mall of America for fun prizes and big discounts. Full list of events, KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Yacht rock purists get heated when bands like the Eagles or Springsteen, for instance, get adjacent comparisons. Very true there. That's from 218 Guy. I love the content. Thanks for the interview with Brian Oake. I'm a huge Steely Dan fan, but I can appreciate that they're not for everyone. Weirdly, it's almost refreshing when a music aficionado does not drool all over them. That's Brian in Bloomington. Yeah, so again, it just goes to show you how subjective musical tastes are, because for me, if you ask me whether I want to listen for the next 2 hours to the best of Steely Dan and the best of Billy Joel, it's Steely Dan, and it's not even close.
I think it is for me, too.
And there's some Billy Joel songs I like, and I respect his talent. There's not any question. But there's a vibe in his music that's just never appealed to me viscerally. I know there's people who say, well, Steely Dan can't appeal to anybody viscerally, but I don't agree. I actually don't agree with that, again, depending on the era of Steely Dan music. I really miss Oak on the Water. That's from Mike and Chaska. I'm sure Oak will appreciate that.
Who doesn't?
The backlash kind of reminds me of the Disco Sucks t-shirts from back in the day. I grew up in a black neighborhood, North Minneapolis, loved soul music and funk, not necessarily disco, but I certainly embraced a lot of it and resented those sentiments. I've heard Oak say he'll take the Partridge Family over Steely Dan. Judd from Chicago, why does Oak loathe Steely Dan? Clearly he thinks their music is not really music. Darren, Steely Dan has some incredible music. He's small-minded, ha ha ha. Yacht rock is what you listened to in the 70s on AM radio. I just thought of it as well-crafted pop music. You know, I think we've talked about this before. When you reach a certain age, I think, at some point you start to feel a little bit liberated that you're going to like the music that you like, regardless of how it's rated by the beautiful people, by critics, or whatever. But when you're in your teens, especially 20s and 30s, and you first go out into the world, into the workplace, I do think it's easier to fall prisoner to, well, they tell me there's not enough of an edge there. It's too perfect. So I got to be careful about how much I say I like it. I might have to distance myself from it because why? You want to be in with those folks. If they're in your social strata, you want to go with them. And so you end up looking for their approval more than you make, I think, the right decisions on what you want to do musically. I think everybody falls into that. Here's how I did. I used to get, for years, this was many years ago, Rolling Stone would put out a sort of like almost like it was paperback, but a big volume of their rankings of records over decades, right? And I would get a given record, and I'd really like it. This is, again, back in my 20s. And then I'd say, I wonder how Rolling Stone reviewed it. And they usually, I think they went on a 5-star. And the album I just bought that I loved got like 2.5. And I was crestfallen. I was like, what's wrong with me? Why? I mean, I guess I'm not with it in wow. I must not have, the critics' mentality or the critic's ear to figure this stuff out. And then at some point you go, well, no, you can't.
You like what you like.
You like what you like. You can't apologize for it, and you can't get as hung up in that. And I think the older you get, the more you just say, screw it, I just like the music. I'm not going to worry about what the beautiful people, it for many years, I think it fell into politics, falls into a lot of walks of life that you got to decide, are you just going to go with the group because that's what the group says they believe is the right take on a piece of music or a politician or whatever? Or are you going to do it because you're trying to use your own thoughts and your own conviction? It's like, no, I don't care that 5 of my 6 friends don't like this. I do, and I'm not going to apologize for it anymore. And if the other people don't like it, too bad. Right?
You got to live your own life at some point.
That's what we like to think. There's a few more texts to get into. We also have a couple of bonus New York sports tabloid headlines. Several of them Twins related, some of them not, which will be a callback to an earlier discussion in the show. We'll explain next. None other than Lavelle E. Neal III texted both of us in response to our discussion regarding the New York tabloids, as expected, having fun with the fact that the Twins traveled to New York and immediately laid an egg against the Yankees, a struggling team, thereby, sort of fulfilling the role as foils that the Twins are supposed to against the Yankees. He says that one of the tabloids used to call the Twins the mini ha-has. I don't remember that. That's brilliant. The mini ha-has. Get it?
I do.
He also said that when the Yankees traded for Knobloch, a headline read, "Stealing second." And Tom from Columbia Heights suggests that the best New York Post tabloid sports headline ever was 2006. When Roger Clemens signed with Houston after teasing a comeback to the Astros, the headline read, "What an Astro." Of course, spelled ASSTRO. If that's a real headline,
oh, I'm sure it is.
You win you retire on that one. That's, how good is that? What an Astro. On so many levels, that's just so brilliant, so perfectly played. I wonder if that headline writer is now retired or is still working it.
I bet in a way they're always still working it. And do you think if you do retire, you text the junior headline writer every once in a while and say, hey, what about this?
You should.
What do we think?
What can't hurt?
Or the junior writers are sitting in the office building or the Slack chat and say, we're kind of running up against a wall here. We've used everything for the Twins. Let's text Bob. It's a talent because the first 2 years I worked in newspapers, I was on the copy desk, which means you're reading and checking other people's stories. And then you're also writing the headline for them. Most people still, I think, are under the mistaken impression that a writer writes his own or her own headline on a story. Almost never happens. You can occasionally suggest things. You might have an idea. And in a headline, you got to fit the space. Back then, at least, I guess maybe not so much now, but I was not. There was an art. There's an art to sort of mastering that particular skill. I like to think I could write okay, but headline writer, I was not very good. But you were writing conversations and not headlines.
That was the problem.
That's why.
And they had to be very tight.
They have to be brief
in tabloid version. Dan, I think you're referring to guilty pleasures. Getting back to the music discussion. Now, I'll admit my guilty pleasures. Like for me, the Monkees are a guilty pleasure. Great songs, great writers like Neil Diamond and Carole King. And see, that is where I rebel. And it really speaks to the point I was making earlier. I don't think respecting and liking and enjoying the music of Carole King should be a guilty pleasure. Carole King was she's still alive, a genius, speaking of music writers, in writing music for other people first, and then ultimately herself. That's what I'm rebelling against. That because it is a term that's used a lot. It's one of my guilty pleasures.
Right, like you should feel bad.
Exactly, yeah. Like you have to apologize for liking Carole King. You shouldn't, even if she's in the pop genre, which she largely has been. If you craft music and melodies that impressive and that long-standing, you do one song like It's Too Late? Come on, man. That shouldn't have to be. I'm not jumping on him, but he's been conditioned to think that should be a guilty pleasure. And I think that's one of those lazy terms that a lot of movie critics, just got to go, or I should say music critics go with, because they've decided, well, this is it's got to be edgier. There's got to be more of a message to it. No, there doesn't. That has value. That might enrich exactly why somebody likes a bit of music. Mike in New Richmond, you guys say that about music and thinking for yourself and deciding you like what you like, but how many follow the religion or politics they do because of peer pressure or family pressure because they're too scared to take a stand when they disagree or decide to think for themselves and be different from those in their circle? I did mention that. He's 100% right. It's not just music. It's a mindset that goes well beyond music and well into religion and politics. Nearly everyone in a religious sense just follows their family path and never questions. Well, that's a pretty broad generalization.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it happens, but they break out.
But and many of them break out. But there is something. There's something to that. But so I never meant to make it just about music. I think it's it's peer pressure. It's you just end up. I think especially when you're younger, you're vulnerable to. I want to belong to something. I want to belong to a certain. That's the group I want to be a part of. Well, it seems like in that group, I can't like Seals and Crofts. Or if I say I like Seals and Crofts, they'll mock me. And they'll say, okay, that's great. You'll pat you on the head. Really? Seals and Crofts? I mean, is there any bite to Summer Breeze? Summer Breeze is a brilliantly crafted pop song.
Good song.
Brilliant.
It's a banger, as the kids say.
That's what they say. Yes.
I always liked this next level, want to belong bit. And I can remember vividly, because then let's say you like a band or you like a group, and you're in the Hip Not Within Wow crowd, and then they put out a new album and you still like it, and the crowd moves the goalposts and go, yes, this isn't the band we grew up with. They've sold out.
Yeah, they've sold out.
They wanted to sell more
records.
Right. And then you got to go, but I still like it. And I remember it happening big time with Dave Matthews, when I was in high school and college, and a kid in my rhetoric class at the University of Iowa, which, believe it or not, I did go to this class.
You did attend. Okay.
Yeah, this class. But I think this shows you why I didn't attend long, because this kid pissed me off so bad. And people were nodding along, and he's like, Dave Matthews is sold out. And he had this whole thing about why and how. And I'm like, all I know is that Hillcrest Hall, it's still pretty popular. It seems like a lot of us still like it. And we're happy if you think, but you have to sometimes go along with that and go, well, they're not who they used to be. It's not the group. I like the old stuff, but not the new stuff.
Yes.
So it's like the goalposts get moved on what's hip and what's trendy.
Do they even really believe it, or do they say it only because that's what they think they're supposed to say? Because they heard somebody else say, "Well, that sounds smart."
Exactly right.
He's got standards now. They sold out. They you know what? They're just reaping themselves now.
Yes.
Come on. They're just interested in the hits. Yeah, that's another great example. All right, let's talk some football. There is several breaking Vikings stories to get to regarding injury, regarding release of a player that once upon a time a lot of people I think liked around here, and we'll get a nice overview on all of that and more from Kevin Seifert. He's joining us now.
Rock legend Daryl Hall is taking over the Minnesota State Fair Grandstand on August 28th, and tickets are available now. Get the full details at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Our next guest absolutely loves questions from the audience. Always appreciates constructive criticism and occasionally even snarky criticism as well. Hit the Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line at 646-86 if you'd like to chat with, or I guess get answers from the guy we're about to chat with, Kevin Seifert, ESPN.com. Did the Vikings practice today?
No, they did not. They were off today in preparation for the big joint practices with the Patriots tomorrow and Thursday.
Okay, that's what I thought. And by the way, we're not going either day now because I don't know. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist guy, but it seems like they worked doubly hard to change the schedule to render our appearances there tomorrow and Thursday as irrelevant. So I don't know what we did to annoy them, but now they're going much earlier. When late, what did KOC tell us? He likes going later in the day. So I don't know what happened, but we're You're on your own.
Maybe Coach Vrabel stepped in and liked it a little different. I don't know.
That could be. That's right. That could be the Vrabel factor. By the way, did he suffer any injuries getting in the middle of that fight the other day?
Apparently, he had a pretty decent gash on his face. He was bleeding when he came out.
Yeah,
of there,
they loved that. Players loved it, though.
I don't think he needed stitches, but he showed that he's willing to bleed literally for his team.
Do you know who I think is an old school coach? And I never talked about it with him, but he's an old school coach who my gut tells me would think that's just the silliest move for any head coach to make. Bud Grant. Don't you think Bud would be a guy? What are you doing? I'm not going to get in the middle of this nonsense. And he's old school. An old school guy.
And I would also guess that if Bud did get in the middle of it, everybody else would be bleeding except for Bud.
Well, that's probably a very good point, too.
I mean, the tough guy of all tough guys.
No doubt about that. All right, so we got the confirmation on Rondale Moore. It's a knee injury. So he is definitely out for the season, and it's the other knee that he was recovering from that sidelined him from a year ago. Is that correct?
That's correct. Just brutal, awful news for him. Literally on the first time he touched the ball in a game since the last time he had suffered an injury last summer with the Falcons, and so going to miss two full consecutive years here.
So you can, I think, help us understand whether you already had the feeling that the Vikings had seen enough from him that if he were able to stay healthy and prove he could stay healthy, that they really were intrigued about what he might offer? Or was this just more of hey, we'll bring him in. We know what he's been. It's a long, long shot about his health and even about how he can fit in. What do you think the designs were on him?
I don't think it was necessarily a long shot, but I think what was happening was as you said, they knew what he had been, and they wanted to see if he could still do it. And so that's why he was out there for that first punt return. With Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and Jalen Naylor, he probably wasn't going to be in the top three as far as a pure receiver goes. But there's lots of ways you contribute to a team, and they need a punt returner. He had done it a few years ago. They wanted to see what it would look like. I hadn't seen any of this in camp, but if things had progressed, maybe they would have found a package of kind of unique plays for him and his skill set on offense to use, whether it was stuff out of the backfield or traditional receivers or whatever. But I think they were excited to see what he might do as a punt returner first and foremost, and that's why he was out there. And then they would go from there. And so I don't know that they thought he was a long shot from a health standpoint. And this injury is totally unrelated to what that happened to him before. And to be fair, was caused by not an illegal tackle, but a tackle that, it was the reason he got hurt is because of the way he was tackled.
Do we know what do you think the approach is going to be at kick return or punt returner? Are we looking? Do you think it's going to end up being somebody that is not on the roster right now?
I think they still have a little bit of time here to see if there is anybody else on the roster. The guy that they are interested in on kick returns is Ty Felton, the rookie that they drafted out of Maryland. He's very fast, and as a receiver last year at Maryland was really good in the open field after he caught the ball, and so there's some transferable skills there. The first time they kicked to him the other day, it kind of bounced off his leg and went flying, and so kickoff return is going to be really potentially a difficult, even more difficult role than it's ever been, because at least more teams than last year, I think, are going to try to kick these knuckleball kicks that stay in the field of play and force a return and try to tackle people or cause a turnover prior to the 35-yard line where the touchback would be measured. So it's a really important role, and it's got to be somebody you can trust back there. And so we'll see if that works out for Ty Felton. There's one other rookie on the roster in Silas Bolden, who's an undrafted guy. I think he was from Texas. And he's kind of a small guy, but very much in the punt return mold, at least. So I think he might get a lot of reps, certainly in the next 2 days against the Patriots, and we'll see how that goes from there. But I would say it's very much a fluid situation overall.
Are we fairly certain that we've already seen the last of McCarthy in the preseason in terms of games?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not going to be this week. He's going to get a lot of work here against the Patriots in the two joint practices, and so it's not going to be Saturday in the preseason game. And then, I mean, if he plays in the third preseason game, that to me means something is very wrong, and they feel very unsettled about where he's at heading the regular season. And so, and even if they did feel that way, you still have to weigh, are you going to use the entire starting offensive line in that third preseason game? Are you going to use some of your receivers? Are you going to use your tight ends? And so it's not just a conversation about McCarthy. And if it were, he probably would have played more the other day. But I think it's just a responsible thing that if you're going to put your starting quarterback out there, the majority of the starting offense should be out there as well. And there's just a lot going on there in terms of, is that all worth it?
So the Asamoah era of Vikings football has come to a close. Is that correct?
Appears so, yes. He was waived today and as part of the roster moves. And so that leaves two members of the 2022 draft class on the roster still, and Ty Chandler and Jalen Naylor. And so we'll see how that goes from here. But yeah, he was really never able to get find a spot in the Brian Flores scheme. Lots of guys, he had, even going back to 2023, he had, we thought he'd be a starter, and Ivan Pace ended up beating him out. And then they drafted this Kobe King this year from Penn State, and he's looked pretty good in training camp in terms of depth. And so the writing was definitely on the wall, but we waited to see what would happen, and they've made a pretty early decision on that.
Are we going to end up missing Addison those first 3 weeks more than people might think?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a drop off between him and Jalen Naylor, and I don't think that's an insult to Naylor at all. And it will be interesting, assuming that we're assuming Justin Jefferson will be fine and ready to go for week one. But if you're the Bears and you have Justin Jefferson and Jalen Naylor maybe as the top two receivers, do you triple team Justin Jefferson on every play? I mean, or we were talking about this, like, if you're the Bears and your overall look at the Vikings offense, knowing they want to run the ball, do you invite J.J. McCarthy to throw more than the Vikings may want him to throw in that first game as well? So it'll be interesting to see. We'll talk more about that as the game gets closer, but I was thinking about that and the various repercussions. And, I don't think anyone ever thought it was not a big deal that he'd be gone for 3 games. And I think that'll be proven over time as well. Are
you on the Xavier Scott bandwagon, or is this classified as one of those preseason, stories that crop up that at the moment sound good and he looks good, and ultimately it means almost nothing once the season begins? Well,
I mean, it doesn't. It can only mean so much as long as Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason are healthy. I mean, because those are the top 2 backs. Those are the guys who are going to split the vast majority of the carries, unless somebody was so good and came out of nowhere to such an extent that it would be malpractice keeping him off the field. And I don't think we've gotten anywhere near that in this particular case. But the third running back is not an unimportant spot on the depth chart. You're just one injury away from being part of the rotation we were just talking about. So it is something to monitor. He has looked pretty decent. A lot of people in camp have been talking about him. I think it mostly points to the fact that Ty Chandler, who we mentioned earlier, is in no way guaranteed of a roster spot, and that position is open, and whether they find fill it with him or Xavier Scott or somebody they pick up on waivers, it would seem to be a position that is unsettled at this point.
Kevin Seifert covers the National Football League for ESPN.com. The Vikings, in particular, joint practices with New England tomorrow. More on that in a minute. Question also coming from 612 guy. Donovan Jackson update is requested. How is he doing?
I think he's been okay. There was initially, like during the game on social media, everybody thought he was getting just smoked. And I think there was one play where he did end up on his back, and that was in part because he either stepped on the center's foot or got pushed over the center's foot. So that was part of that. I thought he was fine in that game, except maybe for that one play, and they ended up completing a pass on it regardless. And so it didn't hurt things but so much. And, he's it's not often that you see a first round pick at any position just be put in a spot and just say, hey, okay, you're the starter. That's you. And they kind of portrayed that to be a competition. But it never really developed because the person he would have been competing with, and Blake Brandel, was sort of filling in for Will Fries on the right side. Will Fries is only now starting to get full reps at that position as he came back from his broken leg. And so, I think he's right where you would hope him to be and if a first round pick comes out of training camp as an unquestioned starter and having really held off any potential competition, I think that's pretty much good news.
How much do you think the quarterback whisperer wants his starting quarterback to run during the regular season?
Kevin O'Connell has used the phrase like steal a down or steal some yards. And so, I haven't taken that as just like a random turn of phrase, like when it's not expected or when the opportunity is so glaring that you have to take it. He has the skills to be able to do it, and I don't think O'Connell wants to discourage him from doing exactly what he did in the preseason game, which I think was it 4th and 4, and he scrambled right away, just scrambled and got the yards easy, and that is absolutely a benefit. If you look at what Washington did with Jaden Daniels last year, and not to compare the two at all, but they would go for it on 4th down all the time, in part because they knew if nothing else worked, he was a good enough open field runner to get it himself in Jaden Daniels. And I don't think McCarthy is quite to that level, and the Vikings won't ask him to be, but like whether it's 3rd down and 3 or 4 or 4th down and 3 and 4, if you have that option, like if he's skilled enough and has the mentality to go steal that first down on 3rd and 4 or 4th and 4, then you would want it. And I don't think he's going to discourage it. Now, they're not going to run any read option. I don't think they're not going to do too many quarterback draws. I don't think, but that's just never been part of this offense, even when they had Josh Dobbs, but at quarterback. But I think he wants him to steal those downs and steal those yards when they're available to him.
How is Hawkinson going to be?
That's interesting you ask. I think he's certainly going to be a guy that, in theory, is a safety net for a young quarterback, because he's not going to be 30 yards down the field. He's going to be closer to the line of scrimmage. He's very reliable in terms of knowing exactly where he's going to be on the field. He's precise in his routes, and when you throw him the ball, more often than not, it's going to catch it. And so I think he's in position, and that tight end position in general, with Josh Oliver as well, are in position to be a really effective safety net for J.J. McCarthy. Frankly, I think Josh Oliver's looked pretty good as well this summer. They just gave him a new contract extension. I think he's going to play a lot. Maybe it's because they'll do a lot of 2 tight ends. I'm not certain yet, but I would include him in the conversation as well.
We didn't play anybody defensively, did we?
In
terms of starters?
I think Ivan Pace played.
Yeah, that's true. But
and
not most
Dallas
of the
Turner
linemen.
played.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's some of the younger guys. So,
right.
Pace is in his 4th year, and then you have Dallas Turner. But most of the primary guys, many of whom are getting long in the tooth, were on the sidelines.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And Darisaw, we played 4 of what we believe will be the starting 5 offensive linemen in when McCarthy was out there. Is that correct? Darisaw was the odd man out?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so we'll see. I'm very interested to see how much Darisaw might do against the Patriots. It'll give us an idea, probably the best idea we're going to get, as to whether he's got a legitimate chance to play in week 1 or not. So,
refresh my memory on it. I feel like the trend in recent years when these teams have come together to have these joint practices is, well, this is our preseason. These are the matchups we're really looking for. We're going at this hard, and yet I assume they got to have some rules in place during these scrimmages regarding the quarterback. So what's in play? Yeah. What's fair game? What isn't? Or is it simply depend on whatever rules are set up by each of the 2 teams that happen to be getting together?
Yeah. So I mean, it's not a preseason game in the sense that there's going to be much and probably not any tackling to the ground. So we would call that live. I don't think there's going to be any live periods. We'll see. Usually that's the way Kevin O'Connell prefers it. And since these are voluntary things that you arrange ahead of time, I'd be surprised if he agreed to do anything differently from what he would normally do otherwise. But it can still be very physical and very intense, and a good gauge in terms of how players will react to less familiar surroundings. You know, you go through training camp every day against the same guys and the same defense, and it can give you a little bit of a clouded set of data points in terms of how a player is going to perform in games because he's so used to who he's going up against in these practices. And so you get a different look and probably a more valuable look at how J.J. McCarthy is going to read the Patriots defense as opposed to the Vikings defense, and how Brian O'Neill is going to block against the Patriots versus against Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard on every single play. And so all different kinds of ways to see on a probably 80 to 90% physicality rate compared to a game is very valuable. And Kevin O'Connell, ever since he got here, has valued these type days probably more than the preseason, to be honest. And there's a role for the preseason in terms of the back end of your roster and some younger players that are going to be on the front end, but just haven't had much experience. But these are where they not only make a lot of observations about personnel, but judgments about their scheme. Like, we've been working on this. Is it gonna work? How does it look against a team that doesn't know it's coming? That sort of thing. And so, all different kinds of opportunities to do some real important things that you may not even want to do in a preseason game.
Who starts at quarterback Saturday at noon against, I don't remember who we're playing in the second week.
Well, it'll be the Patriots. So,
yes, the Patriots.
Yeah.
God, I'm
so
an idiot,
I would assume Sam Howell.
Okay.
And I think your guy Brosmer will probably get a nice run. They'll maybe Brett Rippon will be in there as well.
You were a little condescending, by the way, I thought, in your observation on the Brosmer miracle pass yesterday. Almost like, well, a lot of these kids are really excited about this play, but I've seen this before. It's like, I mean, honestly, you could have been more patronizing.
Well, I mostly was just trying to have a different tweet than what everyone else who was standing there was going to have, because I knew all the other tweets would say Max Brosmer just threw the pass of the century down the field and was caught by a guy named Tim Jones, who 90% of Vikings fans wouldn't recognize, even with the number on his jersey. And so, but it was a really nice throw, and as I think Gessling tweeted, and maybe Alec Lewis as well, in their excitement, that it was probably the best throw of anyone on the particular day. But I just, call me the Grinch or whatever. Like, I just feel like somebody has to provide a little balance.
A little balance.
Do you want to be right, or do you want to be different, Kevin? That's the question. Do you want to be right or different?
Maybe. What if being different is being right?
I was going to say.
I saw the play. I think you were wrong. I think Alec and Ben were right.
If it's any pass Brosmer throws, you know what Garzy's reaction is going to be.
Don't say it in Oregon when he's QB2.
It was a very good throw, and he was really good against the Texans' fifth string on Saturday, and so there's a lot to be excited about for sure.
Another jab. Let me ask you a National Football League business question. Garzy and I discussed this. Well, actually, I think the last day we were at training camp last week, and it's a tweet to introduce it from your guy Clay Travis, because you've covered a lot of the business side of things, and I know you have strong, you pay attention. Here's what he wrote: it will cost you nearly $700 to stream the nationally televised NFL games this fall across 6 different streaming platforms. Add another nearly $500 if you want Sunday ticket. Sports fans are getting gouged. Cable was a much better deal. So there's always that question of the point of diminishing returns. If there's a tipping point where even the NFL ends up getting affected by it. I'll take the accuracy of his numbers for I think they're relatively accurate. But do you agree with the sentiment that there's a chance here that even though there's no league as popular as this one, that there might at some point have to be a financial reckoning for where we are with this thing, with this many platforms, and where you're spending money across in this many different ways?
Maybe. I ultimately it's a market situation. So if there's somebody willing to pay, then if there's a network or a streaming service willing to pay, then that's what you do. And so that argument had been made a lot, as the cost of for the networks to bid on NFL games was rising. Everyone said eventually they're going to hit their ceiling and the NFL is just going to have to take a hit. But what has happened is they found new customers. They found Netflix, they found Amazon, they found Paramount Plus or Peacock or whoever else broadcasts, and the fans are the ones who get gouged and are the ones or have to pay a lot of money, and they're the ones that, just from a logistics standpoint, like let's say you had unlimited money to do all that, you gotta know where all these games are going to be on any given week, and so that in itself is not the easiest thing. And so I don't know if there'll be a reckoning anytime soon, but I know there had been a lot of predictions of that in the past, and then the NFL found this new revenue stream, and so I think for now at least it's not just football, it's every sport. I mean, baseball is maybe harder to if you want to watch a lot of baseball, and not just in your local market, but just around the Major League Baseball, it is very difficult too with Apple TV and all the rest. And so I think it's just the current landscape for being a sports fan.
Your favorite yacht rock musician or group of all time? Well,
the funny thing is it Steely Dan who was considered the first word, the source of all yacht rock, and they hate that moniker, and there's been some documentaries that they don't refuse to talk to because they don't even want to be in it, but so that makes that, I find that very humorous. But I would suppose it's hard to argue with Christopher Cross. I used to go to a summer camp where they would play sailing, because it was like a sailing camp on a river, and they would play sailing all the time. So every time I hear it, that's all I think about, was this wonderful summer days in the coast of North Carolina.
Yeah, that's classic.
Why do you ask?
We were talking about it earlier. I'd finally seen the 2024 documentary. That was pretty good. Probably the best one on the subject.
On HBO,
I ended up seeing it actually on a plane ride just within the last couple months. And we hadn't really talked about the whole concept much on the show. And then I had Brian Oake on today, who's good on anything music stuff related. And so we got into the whole subject of, is it a pejorative term? Are the artists who are unhappy, are they too defensive? Because I actually don't blame some of them for rebelling a little bit, even though, probably the smartest ones just have a sense of humor. But like Michael McDonald just basically goes with it and say, hey, fine, call me whatever you want. Just keep listening to me. I don't really care. I know I'm not doing, like serious music, but I, like what I do. And it's that question of, and whether even the term, I don't even think the term, well, I guess with the exception of Christopher Cross, makes a hell of a lot of sense anyway, because I think it almost comes off as if you have to be an elitist to like some of what I just say is very well-crafted pop music more than it's anything else, even though a lot of the folks I don't even think should be in the same category. But it always comes up because it's a term now that's just thrown around. It's as a label pretty quickly these days.
It's like it's one of the many Gen X nostalgia things. I think like half of music right now is, at least live music and concerts, is catering to Gen X nostalgia. I got a buddy that plays in a yacht rock cover band called the Lonesome Losers. They're around town, and I think anyone who likes yacht rock would thoroughly enjoy. I've been to one of his concerts. It's awesome. If you're a big yacht rock guy, he's the singer. His name's Ben Walensky.
Okay.
The Lonesome Losers.
It's a good name. Are they playing off of the? That was a yacht rock song. Who was it? Little River Band? Didn't they have a song?
Yeah. Loser. Yeah, we used to play it a lot. PA and Dubé days.
That's it. Yeah, I can imagine.
See, nostalgia. That's all this stuff is. It's just a Gen X nostalgia thing.
Will you be going to? Well, no, it's a stupid question. I was about to ask if you're going to go see anybody at
Here we go.
The state fair, but you boycott the state fair these days. So it's a dumb question, isn't it?
I haven't looked at the concert lineup.
It's
I'm
not.
sure it's pretty
It's
good.
thin.
It's not distinguished.
It's thin.
Has
It's
Weird
tough.
Al ever played the fair?
Yeah, because he came. Didn't you see him there before you were on with us, or after
Yes,
you were on
I
with
did.
us? That one of those days.
I absolutely saw him there. It was me and Eric Perkins, a former Care 11 superstar.
How about that?
We both attended. We
What a
ran into
pair.
Boyd Hoopert there. You just never know who you're going to see at a Weird Al concert at the State Fair.
There you go. Yeah. Well, wasn't that the last time you appeared with us at the State Fair? Have you never appeared with us at the State Fair?
I have appeared with you. I've turned my back on Guardsy a few times. And I think, but the last one was probably pre-COVID, so it's been a few years.
Yeah, it's probably been a while. Thank you, my friend. We will chat next week.
Okay, Dan, thank you.
Kevin Seifert, ESPN.com. Top 5 at 5. What do we got? Oh, he's on the phone still. Well, he's actually not on the phone.
We've got Twins, we've got Vikings, and another Wolves schedule nugget.